The biggest thing with hunters is that give customers the ability to seamlessly integrate to as much data as possible. And this is it's really unique to hunters, and it's something that Snowflake is a really important facilitator.
Welcome to Powered by Snowflake, where I interview technology leaders building businesses and applications on Snowflake. I'm your host, Daniel Myers, and today I'm talking with Uri May, CEO and co-founder of Hunters. Hunters is a security operations center platform built and powered by Snowflake. So, Uri, how are you today?
I'm great, Daniel. Thank you so much for having me.
Awesome. So, to really kick this off, I want to learn more about you, your background, and as a co-founder, your story of creating this company. Can you tell me more about that?
Yeah, sure. So we founded Hunters in late 2018. So the company is just becoming 3.5 years old. And when Tomer and I got together, Tomer is my co-founder and CTO of Hunters. It was really important for us to create something impactful in security. We got drawn to security because of our background in the Israel Defense Force and the intelligence community. And we wanted to do something that would be solving a fundamental problem. And back then, there was a lot of companies that are trying to solve a very narrow use cases in security, like cybersecurity for automotive, cybersecurity for medical, cybersecurity for IoT. And we felt that there's something more basic that needs to be addressed, like problems that are a bit more in the essence of the cybersecurity challenge. And we started talking with CISOs, practitioners, industry experts, and everyone kind of like directed us to the Security Operations Center. And when you think about it, the Security Operations Center, that's the brain and the heart. You got a lot of security products. They are all generating huge amounts of telemetry and alerts and detections. All of that information is being shipped into that SOC. It used to be a room filled with people and analysts looking at screens. Today, most of the organizations around the world are doing it from home. And these people in the front line, the analysts and the security experts in those organizations, they are making the decisions. They're getting all of that information. They need to understand if someone has been able to breach the organization, and then they need to investigate it, triage it, and come to a conclusion about what's the best remediations moving forward. And it's not just becoming a big data problem, it's also becoming a very complicated problem because attackers keeps on changing the things that they're doing. And in the same time, there's a massive talent shortage, like in a lot of places in cybersecurity, and it's being felt in a very concrete and aggressive way. And it looked like a place that we can really shine with technology. So the idea from day one was to build a very strong core team of security researchers, and then build a technology that would allow them to encode the way they think about how attackers operate and the way they think about what's the best way to defend an enterprise into a product that can scale that, and with technology that can scale that and really help those analysts in these organizations to better protect their enterprise.
So that's really exciting to hear. And what I see here is that, Hunters is going through an amazing scaling period. You just had, you've gone through Series C, you have about 150 employees. Tell me about kind of, the trajectory that you've gone through from founding it to where you are today.
Yeah, so I mean, first of all, it was an amazing ride. It still is an amazing ride. I mean, we're so lucky to go through it. And I mean, in entrepreneurship, there's always like ups and downs, but I think that what makes Hunter's journey fun and so interesting and intriguing for me, and I'm sure that for the other executives, is that we're working with amazing people. So we were able to grow the company to 150 employees, and we're recruiting, and we're doing that. A lot of it is being remote, but we're also trying to meet in person. We're trying to build a culture that is very inclusive and unique, but also drives for performance and overachieving. And it's fascinating. I think that, I mean, the ability to do all of that in such a short period of time while keep on growing is something that is amazing for me as a CEO and entrepreneur to feel. And in the same time, I think that from a business perspective, the problem that we're solving is very timely. Mm-hmm. We keep on seeing, I think that in the last 2 years, cyber became this persistent guest in every news kind of like headline or TV show. Everyone are talking about it. It's almost something that characterized the time that we're living in. So crime has completely changed and evolved into being something that happens in the cyber world. Everyone are being attacked. Sometimes we're laughing about it. Like we moved from a point in time where only the really big organizations will used to get hacked to a point in time where if you're not getting hacked, maybe something is weird. It's like maybe you're not interesting enough. So it's like we're very lucky to tackle a massive problem with a massive team, and I see a lot of growth ahead of us. I think that this
That's
year
awesome.
is just the beginning.
That's awesome and really, really exciting. So, at this point, I want to see, kind of how Snowflake, fits into Hunter's overall architecture, and really kind of see a demo of Hunters. Can we see that today?
Yeah, sure. So before we dive into the demo, I give a quick overview of the architecture and what we've built and what's going on behind the scenes. The biggest thing with Hunters is that give customers the ability to seamlessly integrate to as much data as possible. And it's really unique to Hunters and something that Snowflake is a really important facilitator. We believe that in security, more data means better efficacy, better accuracy, and shorter time to detect and respond. In today's world, in at least other solutions and other competitors of us, the approach is completely different. And what's unique about Hunters is that we really want to be as inclusive as possible with the data sets that we're bringing in. And by the way, Snowflake is an amazing infrastructure in that regard because the scale, the performance, even the business model. So when you think about it in security, the fact that you're paying for storage and compute in kind of like in different credits is really big because a lot of times you want to be able to collect and store a lot of data, but you don't necessarily want to access all of that data unless you got some kind of an investigation going on or, God forbid, a breach. So us using Snowflake actually gives us the ability to create a much more sustainable business model and a pricing for our customers that in return are onboarding more data into the system, which allows us to generate better results and give them that analytical capabilities that they can get with other solutions. And with that, maybe we can do like a quick overview of the architecture. So started talking about the different places that we can suck data from. So we're integrated directly into security products, but we can also integrate into other SIEMs that are deployed. We are replacing SIEMs, but we can also augment them or be very modular, at least in our approach to them. Sometimes replacing is either not an option or a very complicated project. So we want to support the customer in that journey. And we're also able to integrate into other enterprise data sets, like stuff that are related to HR and other proprietary kind of like sources that can help in the investigative processes and the other workflows that SOC analysts are doing. And lastly, we're integrated into threat intel reports and feeds that contain timely and actual information about attacks that are happening now. And basically, we can take that data and enrich it, expand it, but also continuously operationalize it on top of the customer data. And all of those data sets are being basically collected, transformed, normalized, and ingested into Hunters, into Snowflake. So Hunters is both the ETL for security kind of like platform, but then it's also the analytical engine. And what you can see after the ingestion piece is basically our detection engine, stream processing technology-based infrastructure that is taking all of these data sets and are basically running TTPs that are tactics, techniques, and procedures, and that our research team is building behind the scenes. This is a multi-tenant SaaS, so these things are keep on growing and we're continuously delivering more and more detectors based on research that we're doing, based on attacks that we're seeing. And obviously, customers can also develop their own custom detectors. And all of these analytics, I would say hundreds at the moment and growing, are generating signals and extracting entities from the data. All of these signals and entities are going to an automatic investigation pipeline that includes prioritization, enrichment, contextualization, and then we're loading everything into a graph database. That's something that is very unique in a way that we're trying to solve the correlation contextualization problem. The graph database, and we'll see some examples for that in the demo itself, it gives us the ability to correlate different suspicious behaviors from across the attack surface in a way that wasn't predefined. So imagine that to every couple of suspicious behaviors, there's infinite amount of entity chains that can connect them together. Our algorithms know how to traverse that and find chains or relationships that make sense. and through that to contextualize and correlate these signals. And the output is basically what we call attack stories, which are basically highly correlated, highly contextualized incidents that are based on data that we're collecting from all over the attack surface that are presented to the analyst through our portal or our UI. So that's in a really high level in the architecture, and would love to walk you through and dive a little bit into the demo and show you some cool stuff.
Awesome, let's do it.
So basically, this is the homepage screen. Gives you like a lot of high level operational data on the pipeline and how the data is flowing into hunters. And if you think about it, like basically everything that I walked you through in the architecture slide is here. I mean, this is the ingestion piece that is integrated into all of these sources, ingesting the data, again, normalizing it, transforming it, loading it, and then streaming it through the detection engine that is generating leads. Leads are signals and entities that are going through automatic investigation, and then they're basically being correlated into stories. But I want to focus for a second on the ingest piece, and I want to show you just how diverse the amount of data sets that we're able to consume. There's a lot of everything here, but I mean, we support more than 80 different integrations. Every integration means that we know how to collect, transform, ingest, map it to our schema, and then run analytics on top of it. So, and that's really unique. I mean, if you think about it, the biggest thing that customers are looking for, it's not just breadth of integrations, it's also the depth of integration. I mean, once the data is in, what can you actually do with it? How can we generate insights that can contribute to our overall security posture? And you can see that there's like a lot of very familiar security product names here, but also stuff that are usually not collected and introduced into security operations centers, because there aren't any available integrations for these products, and we're able to bring them in. And again, the idea is that the more data you onboard, the more signals and entities that we can extract, the more interesting the graph is, the more interesting the stories that we can generate. And all of this raw data is being loaded into Snowflake.
I love that it's powered by Snowflake. And how have you seen, with something like this, you have to have quite a bit of scale, right, in order to facilitate the ingestion of all these different sources. How have your customers really benefited from the scale that Snowflake can provide kind of out of the box for you?
Absolutely. So first of all, from a latency perspective, Snowflake performance allows us to be in the ingestion piece and also in the detection piece near real time, which in a lot of other systems, I mean, just being able to ingest these volumes and this variety and keep it real time, it's a very complicated kind of like task. And in the same time, even though we're doing a lot of work on the structured data, in analyzing the data to our analytics and stream processing engine, customers still want to access the whole data and do stuff on them, create reports, dashboards, and the fact that they can access it through Snowflake or through Hunter's UI using SQL and get like amazing performance for their queries. And by the way, if they're running complicated things and they want things faster, they now have the option, they can pay more. And that elasticity of Snowflake is something that is, I mean, in security, it's groundbreaking. I mean, mostly security teams are limited by the capabilities and performance of their tools. A lot of the tools are still on-prem. The stuff that isn't on-prem isn't really cloud. It's like on-prem systems that got moved into the cloud, and the scale, performance, and elasticity that Snowflake provides as a data warehouse for us as a security analytics system or a SOC platform, that's amazing. And one of the most unique things that we're doing with Snowflake is the fact that customers that are Snowflake customers have the ability to get all of what I just talked about in their Snowflake. And that means data ownership and also the ability to take security data and for the first time integrate it with data sets from other departments. And we see a lot of pretty forward-looking customers thinking about Snowflake as the organizational data lake and start populating it with data for more and more systems. And that drives integration between departments. So security data is now being used for fraud and compliance and other stuff. And also other data sets are being introduced into security workloads, and eventually that generates better results for the business. That's amazing. And from a technical perspective, the diversity of the types of data that Snowflake is able to ingest, handle, and then query. Diversity, I mean, structured data, semi-structured data, and even not structured data is really big. And In security, we see a trend now. A lot of systems used to be generating logs that are very unstructured log lines, and we see that more of the systems nowadays, most of the security systems nowadays, security products, are generating logs that are either JSON, which is semi-structured, or really structured information. And again, Snowflake flexibility around ingesting and then querying these data sets is a huge advantage for security.
The power that Snowflake, I think, provides out of the box with semi-structured, structured, and unstructured data, the data sharing capabilities that you mentioned, is a real game changer. So that's awesome.
I don't want to spend all of our time in the product, but there is something really cool that I want to show everyone, and that's basically a story. So we talked a lot about the ingest, and we talked a little bit about the pipeline. This is kind of like the outcome. This is the output of that pipeline that I showed you earlier in the architecture slide. And what you can see here basically is, and I zoom in for a little bit, these are different signals that happened in different areas. In this case, it's not really different areas. It happened on the endpoint in an organizational kind of like environment. But the idea is that these are detections that we're generating. And then you can see our ability to correlate these detections, specifically targeting log4shell exploitations with alerts that are coming from security products we're consuming. In this example, it's CrowdStrike. And what's nice here is that the analyst gets the understanding of what really happened. So who did what and where. And there's a really nice correlation that is happening behind the scenes. And I can just pull up a network view that shows how the graph looks like behind this story. This is kind of like, this is the raw graph that describes this attack story. And the white rectangles, the signals, or as we call them internally, the leads, and the blue circles are basically entities. And you can see how the different leads are integrated into each other and the context that it creates. And this thing has two really interesting benefits to it. The first one is that it gives you the ability to correlate low fidelity signals into a higher fidelity signal and enjoy that joint probability trait of things that are happening in different places but are connected to each other through that chain of entities that I mentioned earlier. And the second thing is contextualization. This kind of view and this kind of like contextualization gives analysts the ability to understand what was the root cause. And that's really important when you want to make sure that your remediation response is accurate. So we talked a lot about ingestion and I walked you through the architecture. I want to spend a few minutes on the actual insights that were generated. So we talked about extracting signals and entities from the data, and then we talked about automatically investigating them and loading them into the graph for contextualization, correlation. I want to show you what's the output and kind of like how analysts can enjoy that complicated graph correlation and then the entire pipeline that we've built around it. And what you can basically see here is what we call an attack story. So you can see who did what and where, and every row is basically a signal that we extracted using our detection system. Some of these signals are signals that we wrote the detection for in the research team that I mentioned, using our research team that I mentioned earlier. And some of the things are coming from the products that we're integrating into. For example, Azure AD sign-in marked as risky. This is like an alert that we analyzed and then loaded into the graph, and it got correlated with the other signals and the other events. And what you can see here is a very interesting use case of a phishing attempt that succeeded. So someone tried to send, probably to an email, a phishing attempt, luring a user to go into hunterssso.xyz. We saw it because we're analyzing DNS queries coming out of the endpoints using the raw telemetry that CrowdStrike is generating. And we found that one of the DNS query to hunters-sso.xyz is suspicious. So that was one thing. And the other thing that we saw was Microsoft generating that risky sign-in to Azure AD. And then we saw a bunch of weird things happening in the Azure environment. The unique thing with that graph contextualization and correlation that I mentioned earlier, and I'll switch to the graph view for a second so it would be clear. System that generated a suspicious DNS query is actually associated with a user named called Larry Miller. He was the person that was logged into that endpoint at the same time. And Larry Miller has an email and is also connected to a person name. And that email and that person name was used to log into the Azure environment in a way that triggered that risky sign. And the fact that we were able to correlate that to the chain of entities, so again, the white rectangles are suspicious signals, and the blue circles are the entities that correlate them. And you can see that there's very complicated paths of entities between these signals. our ability to correlate these things together allowed us to basically show the analyst story where the context means everything in terms of like the way we want to handle the situation and remediate it. So yeah, for an analyst, the ability to see this story as a whole with signals from all over the attack surface basically gives him two main advantages. The first one is contextualizing the story and contextualizing the signals and understanding what went on, understanding that this is not just an endpoint kind of related incident or a cloud kind of related incident, but it's actually an incident that started in the endpoint and then moved to the cloud. And that's really important for an analyst that is trying to understand what's the best remediation. When he looks at a story like this, he knows that, he needs to do something with the fact that we have an attacker inside the cloud environment and only then go and mitigate the problems or the potential risk with the endpoint. And the second thing is that when you look on a lot of these signals, these are really noisy signals. So DNS query to low reputation domain is a very noisy signal. And it's something that is very hard to sign on. And Azure AD sign-in marked as risky is something that in today's world, especially with COVID and work from home kind of like situation, a lot of these user profiling and anomaly detectors running on sign-in data is very limited. So that thing is also very noisy, and Hunter's ability to leverage the graph to take these low fidelity signals and correlate them together into a rich and high fidelity story is something that allows us to highlight a lot of these things above the noise ratio and make sure that analysts are actually looking at them.
That's really great to see. I totally agree with you. The value and the power of a platform like this comes from the insights that you're able to glean from the data that you're ingesting, right? And so having an interface like this and a platform like this that makes that easy is incredible. So this is really powerful stuff. Can you talk, you mentioned the power that Snowflake and the benefits that Snowflake provides for your customers. Can you talk a little bit about how and why, when you were first, architecting and building out this platform, why did you choose Snowflake to build it on top of?
Snowflake and Hunters went through a lot, and then we have a very interesting journey that goes back to the basic beginning of the company. We're very lucky to get support from Snowflake security team. They were one of our first customers, and they helped us shape the vision of the product and the technology. We worked really tight with them. We still are, but back then it was crucial for the success of the company. And with Snowflake security team, the main input that they gave us after the first kind of like couple of introduction calls that we did is like, listen, our data is in Snowflake. So if you want to work with us and we do like your analytical kind of like capabilities and your approach, you would need to be able to integrate into the data in Snowflake. And for a young startup, that's a no-brainer, right? It's like, it made a lot of sense. And then we started looking at the tool, and it looked like a really solid data platform. And from day one, we had this approach where it was very clear to us that if we're going to build such a big technology and such a big platform, we need to choose our battles. And we knew that we want to rely on battle-tested technology for the data layer. Like, we knew that we're not going to build a database. Like, it was very clear. And Snowflake security team kind of like highlighted the fact that Snowflake security team are using Snowflake for security, and we immediately jumped into it, and that worked really well. And we've built something that I think is truly remarkable in terms of like the integration and how deep it is. And the interesting thing is that once it worked that well for Snowflake security team, we started thinking about the business potential of actually offering it to other Snowflake customers. And give them for the first time the ability to integrate the security tools into Snowflake and then get like Hunters analytics on top of that. And that worked out really well. And Snowflake Ventures invested in Hunters as part of our Series A more than 2 years ago. And that kind of like was a full circle, starting from an early customer, moving to be a business partner, to being deep partners in the success of the company as investors. So yeah, amazing journey.
That is pretty remarkable. It really seems like when you work with Snowflake, you get that snowball effect. That's a snow joke.
Absolutely.
So, thank you very much today for joining me, talking about Hunters. This has been really insightful to see. For all of our viewers today, where should they go to learn more about you and maybe get in contact with the company?
Yeah, sure. So, I mean, we got a lot of content on the website, and also, I mean, really interesting blog posts around security in our blog. A lot of stuff from our research team and Axon team, which is our operational threat hunting team. And the blog and the ability and all of the information around contact us is in our website, which is hunters.ai. So yeah, looking forward from hearing from you guys. And if there's anyone that is interested in talking with me directly, I'm at URI at hunters.ai. So feel free to reach out.
Fantastic. And for everybody else here, if you're looking to build your next application on Snowflake, check out developers.snowflake.com. Thanks.